Franklin County Commissioners meeting, March 31st, 2020.
Good morning, everybody. It is 9 a.m. on our last day of March, a regular Tuesday board meeting, and we have Commissioner Peck on the phone, Commissioner Didier and Cook here at the desk, and Keith Johnson and Karen Milham, and we do have an audience this morning. So if you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda is approval of March 18th special meeting minutes. If there's no addition, changes, or corrections, I'll sign them as presented.
I'm good with them.
No changes.
Thank you. That will take us on into our payroll and warrant register.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve fund expenditures in the amount of $211,362.04. And let it be noted that this has been reviewed by our administrator and two people in the auditor's office.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 That was one and only this one.
Yep.
All right. And we'll move on to the consent agenda, 1 through 8.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull number 8 for separate discussion and vote, and I'd also like to comment on 1, 2, 5, and 7. So I move to approve the consent agenda with pulling number 8 for a separate discussion and vote and discussion on 1, 2, 5, and 7.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Okay, on items 1 and 2, and I see Mr. Mahoney's in the room, I'd just like to say that the rest of the monies here are looking like they're going to go to reflector posts, which are on the stop signs, and then also to improve intersections, which is good. But my discussion on 1 and 2 was the fact that the reflector strips that we paid PSC to put in here a month ago, as I'm traveling the road, Matt, they are disappearing rather quickly. I brought 2 of them in. I'm going to show them to you. And what it is it's the farm equipment. We're getting bigger equipment. People are using bigger equipment. We've got 20-foot plus going up the roadway. In order for them to allow the traffic to go the other way, they're hitting these reflector strips. One of them I brought in actually was pulled out of the ground, even with the cleat that they have in it. It pulls them out of the ground. The other one was severed off from probably Tater Boy out here, which is now Lamb Weston, to my house. There's probably 50 of them already disappeared. They're laying right beside the road. The corner right past Self Landing, the whole corner has been mowed flat. They're gone. And they are a benefit. Talking to my wife, she's an EMT, and she said that they really help at night to keep you on the road, but they're just not going to work in conjunction with the farm equipment that is being moved up and down the road. And I'm afraid that when we hit potato digging season with the 4 road diggers with the bits, when those bits go through the ground, they get extremely sharp, and they will grab them and either sever them or they're going to pull them out of the ground. So they'll probably all be gone except for the ones that are protected by guardrails and the obstructions. So we're probably going to lose most of those coming up here. On 5 is the 30% mag chloride award of supply, and again, this was $126,000, I believe. We're buying this, and I've had so many neighbors calling me because when you put this down on the ground, it compacts the ground and it keeps the dust down. But when it rains or a sprinkler gets on the road, it becomes extremely slippery. They've said they've almost slipped off the road. It's very rust inhibited. It rusts up their cars. Their fenders are rusting out. It's creating rust on their vehicles. And then they're packing it in their garage, and there's a video that one of my neighbors sent in where they chip it off of their concrete, and it is like a concrete itself. It adheres. So I'm not really in favor of this 30% mag chloride. I think we'd be better spending our money on gravel and putting gravel on the roads instead of this. I don't see this as being that beneficial. In fact, it's actually hurting and it's putting us into more of a jeopardy as far as slipperiness when it's wet. But please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I'm not going to stand here in front of the board and say that times when we do get moisture, that it doesn't get a little slick. That can be said about a lot of our gravel roads, just based on even the composition. If they got a little bit more clay, caliche in them, they can have the same thing. One thing I will say about this magnesium chloride is this is exactly the same product that every jurisdiction, including the DOT, puts down for de-icer, anti-icer. We go out there and we drive every day on these. Like I said, I'm not here to create any arguments with landowners, but we're out there working with the stuff. We're the ones that are out there when we put it down. We do also get some of this on our vehicles, and we've had no problems washing it off just with our conventional. So we're not sure of the conditions that existed where an individual got it and it was like concrete. I'm not denying it happened, but it certainly for us is we haven't seen those issues internally with our own vehicles driving on these roads when they've put it down or even going out when we have had those events. Because certainly when we have those events, we have to go out on all of our gravel roads. I mean, we had one of the worst winters we had, and our gravel roads took the worst hit of all the roads during that winter that we had. So the reason that we use it is it's a huge cost savings to the county. The roads that we select to use it on are usually higher ADT, meaning higher average daily traffic than some of our other gravel roads based on maybe location, the terrain, meaning is there a lot of vertical curves, horizontal curves? Are these roads that we spend a lot of time blading, where we have to be out there once every week, every 2 weeks? And when we put this down, it means that we don't have to be out there but maybe once or twice a year. That's a huge savings in blading operations that also allows us to go and blade other roads instead of having to stick on these same roads once every week, once every 2 weeks. We've definitely have heard more comments brought up about, especially, I would say over the last 2-3 years, but we're always trying to look at what we can do to make it better. This is the one individual, certainly we've heard from this individual the last 2 or 3 years, but we also have other individuals throughout the county that absolutely love it, that live on the road, and we also, not only do we put it down, but the county has a policy for permit for people that want it on their roads in front of their house. They can get a permit. We have a lot of people that from a permit standpoint want to put this down. So I think that we do need to have some good conversations about it. I would just ask that maybe that we have the opportunity as a department to put a lot more information together about the product that we're using, put together some information about this. It's one thing for me to say it saves us money. It's another for me to prove it to you. So that we can have a discussion. Maybe we can become a little bit more, not a little bit more, but we can be more precise on where we use it and work on those areas. But at this time, I guess I'm asking the board to give us some time to put together some information, but still go forward because, as I said, this certainly is welcomed on many roads throughout the county, and this is really just a complaint about one road. And if the board wants, and I get direction from all three board members, we
Yep.
cannot put it down on, we just won't put it down on this road this year.
Now, there was another complaint down there closer to town, too, on the development up on the hillside, the road that bends and comes back over to Taylor Flats.
I know that we've had some complaints when we put it
Yeah.
down on Alder.
Yeah.
And the issue with there was we were using our signs that were basically wet oil signs, and it was creating this we were doing it to ourselves. It was misinformation. People thought we were putting down oil,
Okay.
and that was the problem. And hopefully,
Isn't there a little bit more clay on Alder, for instance?
Yes.
It doesn't mix as well.
yeah, you've been here, you and Commissioner Peck have been here a long time, and we had a road superintendent at one time who wanted to incorporate a lot of clay, and you're familiar with that, Commissioner Didier. Wanted to try to incorporate this, bring in and import clay onto some of our roads and incorporate it in to get them to set up. But
It's made a mess.
so that's cost us a little bit on some of those roads. I'm trying to get those back. A little bit of clay is good, but too much clay is bad. So,
And this is a sealant, so it seals the ground and keeps the moisture up on top, so it actually,
Yes.
yeah.
yeah, the whole idea, we use it in this case for base stabilization. The permit process is really a dust abatement. Most people that do it for a permit want it to cut down on dust, and that can be with critical crops. It could be with homes. We have some residents that have bad allergies and certain diseases that having no dust coming from the road is important to them during the summer, and it's very effective for that. We're not going to deny that it's a perfect dust abatement.
So a question then is does it aid in preventing washboarding going on these roads? Is that what I'm hearing from you when you say you don't have to
It
blade
can.
as much?
It doesn't eliminate them, but it certainly slows down the progress of washboarding and rutting that can occur, especially in those stop-and-go conditions. It slows that down.
Vertical grades,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So it really what it does is it just eliminates us having to go in on certain roads once every week, once every 2 weeks, to where now we only have to go in a couple times a year. Some roads like Commissioner Didier just mentioned where we do get some washboards, we go in and we can just do spot repairs in those areas where we can and get them done. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So the last question I have is on number 7. This is just a recap of last year's, everything that's taken place within the county.
Correct.
And so it's just the monies that we allocated and where they were spent and how much was spent on each location.
That's correct. Yes.
And I'm just,
And without that, we don't get any more.
yes, we have to have it done by April 1, and this is the
Today.
31st.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand that, and I'm just looking it over, and maybe you and I can get together and you can explain it to me a little bit more, because it's the first time I've seen this, and I would like to know more about how it's all laid out here. And
Absolutely.
explain it to me. I appreciate
And
that, Matt.
actually, the gentleman who puts this together is the county engineer every year, and we'd love to have you
Yeah.
at our office, and we'll engage in social distancing.
Yeah.
And
Well, that was the other.
he would be the expert in that area.
And that's the other thing I was going to propose, is that when we get through this, and I think that we're going to get through this just fine, and we're going to get this behind us, we really need to have a workshop with the public and have a sit down, because there are a lot of people who would like to come in and talk, especially about the borrow pits, about this being put on the roads, and then you can explain, and we can maybe just tell the people why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean,
A workshop would be big, because if they don't come to the workshop and they want to complain to me, I'm going to say, why weren't you at the workshop? Because all I can do is relate. I'm the in-between guy. I wanted to hear it from you.
yeah, and you know me well enough to know I love what it is we do. I love our mission, and we're always up for comments and people letting us know. Like we always say around here, we don't know what we don't know.
That's right.
And so we do rely on that and the opportunity, but we're just always looking at ways to do things better. and more efficiently. Our term, what we use in our office is efficient and effective. So that's what our focus
Okay.
is.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
That get through your comments?
Yes, that's through the first
So
7.
what we have in front of us is a motion to approve 1 through 7 and separate number 8. If there's no further discussion, I'll take a vote on 1 through 7.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, number 8. This resolution is put in here, and it's it is a resolution, is it not? Yes, a resolution 2020-074, and it extends this executive order.
That's the one we passed.
089.
2020-089 is the current one that is being asked to pass.
Oh, 089? 2024.
089, which is the current resolution before you today, is to extend the provisions of 074. 074 had an end date of April the 6th, I believe.
6 or 7.
Okay, I didn't see the 089 in here on this as to where that number is. It's on the next page, it looks like. No, 74.
It's on your agenda, for one thing.
It says 074, 089. Okay, there it is. All right. Okay, on this, I have an objection to this being extended with the new language that our governor has put forth, and that is that we are supposed to be reporting businesses to the Attorney General and reporting our neighbors if we think there's something wrong, and I do not agree with that. I'm all for the shelter in place and everything that was put forth in the first executive order, but when he starts acting as if we're not a representative republic, I get a little offended. And if this is going to be put into place, it needs to go before our legislature. It needs to be debated and voted on before it comes forth. I have no problem with the first executive order, but when he starts putting stipulations on there that we're supposed to report businesses and neighbors, I have a problem.
Yes, where is this in this resolution?
Well, I don't believe it's in the resolution, but it has
Well,
been.
yeah, the governor can, that's why I'm saying, I don't know why you want to pull this resolution, because it has nothing to do with reporting,
Well, that's what he came out with in his last
that
announcement.
press conference.
Yeah.
But
If I may make a distinction, Mr. Chairman, our resolution that's before you today does refer to the March 23rd executive order of Governor Inslee, but that's in a whereas statement. It's a basis for us making the decision. It's not the decision itself, if that's a fair enough distinction. The therefore piece of the resolution, the part that our board is actually being requested to adopt, is a continuation of our earlier resolution to allow agencies, department heads, myself, others who are responsible for managing the county functions to be able to continue to do what we did in the context of the governor's order. Having said that, Sheriff Raymond is in the audience today. He can certainly speak to law enforcement efforts, and I think what you're talking about is how much reporting goes on of calling in their neighbors or their businesses. Sheriff Raymond's got law enforcement well under control in the county. He's responsible for that, so there's no need for us to get, I think, too worked up about the State Patrol or the National Guard or anybody else trying to enforce upon businesses or individuals limitations that may not be reasonable for Franklin County that may have some application in Seattle or other parts of the state. So I'm comfortable with moving forward.
You're comfortable with the fact that we don't have to abide by Inslee's demands that we report?
I wouldn't go on record and say we don't have to abide by Governor Inslee's report, because there are certainly scenarios where we would ask the sheriff to take law enforcement action. That's a possibility. But right now, we have not seen a need for that in our county. I don't expect to see that need. The residents of the county are well-behaved and law-abiding citizens. I don't think we would have a need to do that. But should something come up, this would give the sheriff appropriate authority to act.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a couple thoughts on that. First, I concur with the notion that I don't want any legislative body requiring citizens to turn in their neighbors. That doesn't fit with my philosophies, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't with the rest of the board. Secondly, the governor's executive order is binding on Franklin County, whether we like it or not. Third, the sheriff is the CEO of the public safety of the county, has the authority and the discernment to decide where he wants to prioritize law enforcement, and if he chooses to make that portion of the executive order low priority, that's within his authority. And I would hope that, in fact, he does that. I suspect he would. And so I think the discussion is good. I don't think that the inclusion of the governor's reference to the governor and the attorney general in the whereas makes that necessarily binding for us to go out and promote that kind of turn in your neighbor mentality. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to support us doing that. Again, I don't think the board is, but just want to be clear that it's the governor's executive order. We can ignore it to the extent that the sheriff has discretion, but we can't pretend it doesn't exist either.
And I see the sheriff in the room. Would you be willing, Sheriff, to comment on this? Thank you very much.
So I know of exactly one complaint that we've received in the sheriff's office, and it was reference to a family walking too closely together. We didn't respond to it, nor do we have intentions to do that. Just general speaking, within the boundaries of Franklin County that we're all responsible for, I haven't seen any violations. I have went and talked to the majority of the businesses. Everybody's doing what's asked of them, and it's business as usual as much as it can be usual. If there's any enforcement actions that take place, I'm the one that'll be doing that. And if the state patrol or somebody else decides that they're going to come in to take care of business, if you will, and flex their law enforcement authority, then if and when that ever happens, then I'll flex back. But I don't believe it's going to happen. People are doing a great job in this county policing themselves, and I believe that is going to continue on through April 30th. And I don't think you're really going to find neighbors in Franklin County, to be quite honest with you, reporting anything to the Attorney General or the Governor, because we're doing just fine.
Thank you, Sheriff. I needed to hear that. Thank you. All right.
You make a motion on number 8?
I'll let Brad make the motion.
Chairman, move to approve the subject resolution just under discussion as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Clint. We're in a portion of our agenda for Mr. Johnson and the administrative office business.
Yes, just briefly, Mr. Chairman, don't have anything for additional action, just kind of give an update on where we are with respect to the COVID-19 reaction and closure. Most of the public facilities of the courthouse have been significantly restrained. Nothing has been completely closed. There are still court operations going on a restricted basis with essential staff. I know the various elected officials are maintaining certain office hours to accommodate public needs on a case-by-case basis. Most of them are not taking public meetings unless it's absolutely essential. So we would just continue to encourage the public that if they have business to conduct with any county department, that they call in advance to make sure that they can get an appointment to see, so that we can meet the social distancing requirements. There are some matters of federal legislation that have taken place with respect to human resources and payroll issues. Carly has been putting together a significant amount of analysis of those pieces of legislation. stimulation packages that they're trying to get done, as well as some regulatory environment around family medical leave and other kinds of leave. It's a little premature to digest or see what, or to analyze that in context of this meeting, but I just want you to be aware as a board that we're taking a look at those things. I've also had some discussions with the Treasurer's Office, making sure that we are staying on top of our cash flow needs at a time when many businesses and individuals may be struggling in the community. We want to make sure that the financial responsibility of the taxpayers as a county are being addressed. So we're looking at financing options in the event we should have to seek some additional line of credit. We're looking at making sure that we have the cash available for our upcoming bond interest payments, those kinds of things. Recognizing our obligation to our junior taxing districts that all have property taxes coming due in the month of April. It makes it a difficult timing issue, but I just wanted you to be aware that I'm continuing those conversations and making sure that we can continue to move forward. I say on behalf of the elected officials and department heads, I think they're doing a remarkable job of keeping their staff busy. Certainly we're not at 100% productivity, but we have a lot of employees that are working from home. IAS has made it possible for them to access the virtual private network that maintains the security of our data but allows people remote access to their desktop computers. So most of county business is still being conducted as we would expect it to be. And this is a new day, a new challenge for us, but I believe that the elected officials and department heads have stepped up to make it work as best as they can under the circumstances. So with that, I'd certainly answer any questions that any of you may have.
Well, I think for one thing, the health district on Tuesdays and Fridays are putting on a decision makers roundtable, so to speak. I'm getting more pertinent, timely information out of those than listening to our governor and attorney and even the governor and the health district were on the other day, and I think that decision makers on Tuesdays and Fridays are far better time spent. It's more up to date, and
I agree.
I think you and I both have been on.
Yeah, those are really good. Then I've also been participating with my counterparts in the state of Washington. All of the county administrators have a call every Friday just to compare notes and share experiences, and that's been very helpful.
I noticed today at the store where I grabbed my cup of coffee, the front page of the Tri-City Herald said there's 24 people that have been infected in a retirement home. And at the last board meeting, I made mention of the fact that this is the most vulnerable people, or the retirement and the assisted living. These are the homes that we really need to protect, the in and out traffic, especially people that are working, that if they leave and they come back for another shift, they really need to be checked before they enter. But now we've got 24 people in that retirement or assisted living. I don't know which one it was. I didn't read the article, but they have got the COVID-19 virus.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be where that spreads the fastest, is amongst that aging, vulnerable population in confined spaces.
Anything else this morning, Keith?
No, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
couple of thoughts. Keith, with respect to taxing districts and the county's own tax collections, with the massive increase in unemployment across the country, but in our own county as well, pretty significant increases. Although I'd note only about half the increase of what they saw over in Benton County in the same time. Nevertheless, more and more people are going to be, let's call it, income challenged. And I think we need to be thinking about how we address the inevitable increase in number of people who can't make their tax payments or can't make them on time, and how that factors into our own county liquidity and what sort of policies and procedures might be put in place. While I'm not suggesting that this is a solution for Franklin County by any means, I will note that the Small Business Administration as part of the federal legislation, is covering portions or in some cases all of mortgage payments for SBA borrowers. And again, I'm not suggesting that the county can afford to do that, just that we need to be thinking about what we do if and when we see a significant reduction in the ability of our citizens to make those tax payments on time. Second thing is that I find it reasonably effective and convenient to do these meetings remotely as part of leading by example, that when and where we can do our work without commingling, it's in the public's interest as much or more than our own individual interest. And if it gets to the point where any of you are missing my charming personality and presence or in person, you just let me know and I'll start attending. And I think that's it for now.
Well, as long as you can hear and be heard, I think it's pertinent information, Brad.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, we're at the public comment period of our agenda. I don't know if anybody is watching. You can see a phone number to call on the front.
I do have one caller on the line waiting.
Okay.
So go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to do as a follow-up to what Commissioner Peck brought up. Internally in the County Roads and Motor Vehicle Fund specifically, we are heavily reliant upon gas tax revenue, and we know that those revenues are going to be going down. And so very similarly to what the board needs to be looking at with the general fund, the current expense fund, we're already looking at those areas that we're going to need to cut, because certainly within those funds specifically, we are reliant on revenue. We're not tied to our approved budget from the standpoint of we can spend up to that amount without any regard to revenue. We have to have the revenue that supports our expenditure, so we're constantly making necessary decisions. So that being said, one of the areas that we're looking at is a significant cut to our chip seal program this year. We still want to go through a crack seal. Crack seal is a very important thing in getting the road sealed so water can't get into the subgrade. But just letting the board know that we're already anticipating a huge drop in our gas tax revenue and already are being forced to look at things that we can do to make the necessary cuts to ensure that we don't overexpend our revenues. With that said, I would appreciate the opportunity, if it works out for the board better, to provide them with information via email so that I can get input from the county administrator as well as the board on those areas that we're going to need to cut, because we are going to need to make some cuts this year. It's inevitable. So that's all I have.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Well, and with that, Keith, I think we're going to see decreased revenue on sales tax.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's going to hit all sectors of the economy the longer this goes on, and that's why I'm having those discussions now. It's premature to try to gauge how deep the impact is going to be, but I think all of us recognize that there will be some.
Yep.
And again, as I mentioned earlier, the obligation that the county has to protect the interests of junior taxing authorities is important. The school district is, for example, the majority of property taxes go to the school, and so a decision at the county level that could affect those other taxing districts can be a critical one. It doesn't just affect the county, so I just want us to be aware of that and the fact that we're including those factors in our discussions.
So with that executive order that Governor Inslee put down, does that mean that these people that are building these new schools are shut down now too? Because they made mention in their email they're not shut down.
I believe schools are
they're still working
considered
on
an
this.
essential.
Okay.
That's what I heard originally.
Yeah. Because they
He
said
changes every time you listen to him. So.
well, they said they're on a very tight timeline.
Yeah.
So, and they're going to get fined if they don't get it done in time.
Yeah. And that requires There's requirements in their bond agreements
Right.
to meet construction schedules.
You say you had somebody on the phone?
Yes, I have a Mr. Lips on the phone. Mr. Lips, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, you are live in the commissioner's room. Welcome.
All right, thank you. So I'm calling in just to voice my concerns about this dust abatement system on the gravel roads. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep, you're coming in loud and clear.
Have you been on the agenda for a while? We had quite a discussion with Mr. Mahoney about that just a few minutes ago.
Well, I don't know. I'm just kind of doing what I'm told here, trying to call in. I'm not used to doing this stuff, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit.
You're quite all right. Go ahead and state your concerns.
Okay, so two main things. We're going to start with the fact that when it's wet. So when it's wet, this magnesium chloride for 30% is very corrosive, and it sticks to all of our vehicles when we drive up and down the roads. I'd like to state that we have no other option except to drive up and down these roads for both work and personal means. We are surrounded on both ends by these unpaved roads that are treated with this stuff. We live off of North Cooley Road, and we are in between North Cooley and North Dayton. So, as I mentioned, it's very corrosive, and it also sticks to everything, so that kind of implies that it's muddy. It's very muddy, and it makes it also very slick, which I'm surprised isn't being looked at as a very huge liability factor. I mean, I know if somebody slides into me because of the terrible condition of these roads, there's going to be lawsuits, and I'm going to be urging anybody else that has the same problem to be doing the same. And that will take away the cheap cost of these quote-unquote maintenance of these unpaved roads very quickly. Now, when it's dry, it turns more into a cement-like compound. You know, I'm sure you guys are somewhat familiar with this, but you know, we'll just have to kind of take it as it goes. So we end up with potholes. It does kind of eliminate the washboards from the normal gravel road, but we get potholes, and I feel like that's much worse as they're sharper, they can pop tires. And it also turns to cement. Now, I mentioned a little bit ago that when it sticks to our vehicles, it's a mud and it sticks to our vehicles. So when we bring our vehicles home, it still drips off and it'll drip onto our concrete. And you should see the amount of work it takes to scrape the stuff off of our garage floor, off of any other concrete surface. It's basically just like more concrete on top of it. It's terrible. Now, supposedly you can wash it off, and I guess after it's hardened, it should still loosen up, but I don't feel that we should have to wash our vehicles every single time we go to and from any gravel road for either personal or work means. Now, during the summertime, we're farmers out here. During the summertime, it takes at least 2 trips back and forth down those gravel roads for us to check water every day. And this doesn't count if anything's broke down, this doesn't count tractors, anything like that. You wouldn't believe the amount of times we have to go up and down county roads during the summertime especially. And whether they're in good condition or not, we kind of just have to deal with it. So the stuff isn't too bad, but when it gets wet, boy, it's a mess. And I mean a mess. I have been up pivot roads and service roads on farms. Almost all of them were in better shape than our county's gravel, quote-unquote gravel roads, because they're really not gravel by that point. And it's just kind of ridiculous. There was one day especially that comes to my mind. It was after the snow melt. I had to put my pickup in 4-wheel drive or I physically could not make it up the road. And these are our county roads. Now, I know that things are going to kind of happen the way that they're going to happen because it's very hard to get anyone to listen to us, and that's why I'm calling in here. I'm hoping that you guys have the heart to listen to our concerns and realize maybe what it's like to be in our position from this stuff. I mean, it seems to be that the biggest concern with this is the money, and like I said, if somebody tries to sue over this stuff and wins, that's going to take that cheap cost right away. And, I mean, I could go on and on about different things that I see problems with how our funds are being spent I mean, road markers on some of these main roads have been busted off and just pretty much a waste of money because it's just the poor construction of the idea. I mean, I'm speaking mainly of those road markers on Taylor Flats and on Ringgold Road that I've noticed that they've been there for maybe a couple weeks, and I would say probably at least 30% of them have been busted off, but from either being ran over or hit. And they're obviously not doing their job if people are still doing that. Now, all of our bridges and even our paved roads have been having issues, but I usually don't bring things up because I understand money can be tight. But when we're spending, I've heard numbers of $120,000 allocated to this dust abatement system, basically to ruin our roads. I don't know what other people have said in trying to pitch this idea, but I can tell you that it is not the solve-all, win-all solution that they've been saying. It turns them into a complete mess, and they are not what would be considered gravel roads anymore. So with that, I think that pretty much closes what I'd like to talk about, and if anybody has any questions for me, I'd love to take them.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. But this is a comment period only. It's not a discussion period. So.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Do you have another caller?
Okay.
About a 30-second delay making the connections. Good morning. This is Keith Johnson in the Franklin County Commissioners room.
This is Anna.
This is Anna. Anna?
This is Anna. Good morning.
Good morning. You are our next public commenter, so please take your time.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody there. It is, I guess, we are in a new bracket of time where we can address the commissioners via phone. So thank you very much for everything you're doing there. Just a comment. I know right now with the time that we're going through the collecting of taxes, it might be challenging as you have addressed. Is there a possibility that you can do, that you can present in the near future, a potential forecast on how this would impact the county and how can the county prepare for, bring forth some potential recommendations that the county can do to mitigate the loss of taxes, the potential loss of taxes that we will see.
You want me to respond to that?
Please.
As a comment, but yes, Anna, thank you. We are, in fact, considering a number of different vehicles for making sure that county stays solvent through potentially downturn in the economy. As Matt Mahoney stated earlier in his comments about public roads, the general fund is really no different. We are a cash-based budgeting system. We are only able to spend what we have received in revenues through primarily sales and property taxes.
That's correct.
And so we have to be very aware of how much they come in on a monthly basis. They are reported to us first, usually from the Department of Revenue at the state level, and remitted back to us. The Treasurer's Office reviews those cash balances daily. We do have some cash in investments that we do not currently need for the current operating period, but will need as we move forward, because our primary source of revenue of property taxes really only come in a couple of times a year. They come in really heavily in April and then later in the fall. And so we have to manage according to that cash flow cycle, and that's why we're looking at perhaps a line of credit from our bank if we should need to tap into some short-term operating capital. We don't. We don't want to borrow money to try to get ourselves out of a tough financial situation, but we're considering all kinds of options in this analysis.
Anna, this is Bob.
Hi, Bob.
I don't know if you read the agenda or not, but this is a comment period, not a discussion period. Your discussions like that are best taken on one-on-one.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you. Have a good day. Goodbye.
Peter, good morning.
Good morning. Peter Mackinder from Franklin County Assessor. Weekly, the Washington Association of County Officials are having a call with the different affiliate groups. So the assessors have a group, the treasurers have a group, the auditors have a group. And that call is to hopefully flesh out some of these ideas so that we can get direction from the Department of Revenue or understand what the state of emergency has done and how that impacts maybe the potential operations of each office. So it's been productive, I think, but a lot of these issues are being discussed, and hopefully that will give us some consistency going forward and some direction for our individual offices. So, yeah, that's going on as well every week. I know I think they do it for the, I think Public Safety does one as well later in the day. So they kind of do a financial call and then they do a public safety call later in the day. So those groups are communicating as well. So thank you.
Any news in the Treasurer's office this morning? Want to share? Okay. Any other comments? Nobody else on the phone?
Nope, not at this time.
Anything else for the good of the board? You can hear us all right, Commissioner Peck?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Good. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.